What's up, everybody? It is time to talk about the lightweight division because I feel like lightweight is in a very interesting place right now. And I would say that the two most stacked divisions in the UFC right now are welterweight and flyweight. But I feel like lightweight is really starting to gain some steam right now. And we know over the past several years, the lightweight division has been one of those divisions to where it is some of the biggest stars in the UFC. And when you look at especially the top five in the division, they are some of the biggest names that we have in the entire sport. And I feel like lightweight's very interesting, right? You have Justin Gaethje, a new champion. You got Ilia Topuria, who took the first loss of his career, right? We got a lot of big names at the top of this weight class. So what I did is I went ahead and booked a fight for every single fighter currently in the lightweight rankings. And I want to go through this and explain why these are the fights that I want to see next and how they make sense for the division and how they make sense for these fighters as well. So first I want to take a look at the current rankings, right? Because obviously with the new ranking system, it's interesting to say the least, right? It feels like every week that I take a look at this, it's just moving all over the place, right? There's guys that are bouncing out of the rankings, guys that are bouncing in. It shifts like crazy these days. But the reality is when you look at the top five in this weight class, and then including the champion Justin Gaethje, so top six fighters, man, they are all massive names. Gaethje, Topuria, Sarukian, Oliveira, Holloway, and Pimblett. I mean, it's an exciting time in the lightweight division. But when you look at the matchups and how you can match up who against who's going to fight Gaethje, right? We've heard from Gaethje, he's not quite sure what he wants to do. Is he going to retire? Is he going to stick around? I have a good feeling that Justin is going to stick around because I believe that there are some legacy fights for him, right? So we're going to talk about that in just a second. But I do want to mention that Quillen Salkild will be fighting Mateusz Gamrot in August in the Apex. So that fight is already booked, which is a great fight, right? And if Quillen Salkild can get through Gamrot, that is a massive victory because we know how much of a dog Gamrot is and the stylistic problem that he is for a lot of fighters in this weight class. So it's a big test for Salkild. Quillen's got a ton of hype right now coming off of that KO win over the chinny Beneil Dariush, and he goes down these days. So big win for Salkild. It's a big matchup in this weight class. And whoever gets that one done, they are probably going to be fighting a top five guy next. But without further ado, let's rock and roll right into this thing. Who should Justin Gaethje fight next? I feel like it should be Charles Oliveira. And I know that this is one that might rile some people up, and they're going to say, no, it's got to be Arman Sarukian. It has to be. He's the true number one contender. He's earned a title shot. He has a win over Charles, and what I thought was a razor-close fight that could have went either way, by the way. The reality is when the hell is the last time that Arman Sarukian fought? It's getting to the point where I can't even keep track of an Arman fight. And listen, I'm an Arman Sarukian fan. I think he's a fantastic fighter. But this dude is competing more in RAF than he is in the UFC. And I know that there's a lot of people, they've really hopped on the Arman train, and I get it. He's been streaming. He's been funny on social media, all the eating stuff he's been doing, right? He's been entertaining. Then he's done a great job, kind of rebranding himself in a way, going on these podcasts and doing all this stuff to where he has really built up his name. And I feel like that gives him kind of some leverage to a degree. The problem is he fought Dan Hooker in, back in November? And then before that, he fought Charles Oliveira at UFC 300. So it's kind of back in this limbo mode with Arman where it's like, clearly we know that he is one of the best lightweights in the world. And we want to see him fight for the title, but it's like, how can you justify giving this dude a title shot when he's just not active? So, and is that his fault? Is that the UFC's fault, right? Because we know a while back they offered him Gamrot and he was like, you can miss me with that. And we know how the UFC is when it comes to that kind of stuff. They like the people that step up and take the opportunities. And who is a fighter that consistently steps up when called upon and takes the opportunities? Charles Oliveira. What has Charles Oliveira been up to recently? I know he got knocked out by Ilia Topuria in the vacant lightweight title fight, but then he bounced back rather quickly. Right, he was supposed to fight Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev pulls out. Charles says, no problem. Give me Gamrot. Give me that pest of a stylistic matchup that nobody wants to deal with. Go ahead and give me Gamrot. By the way, the guy that beat Arman Sarukian in what was a very competitive fight, but still, Oliveira dominated Gamrot. Out-grappled Gamrot. How insane is that? Touched him up on the feet, out-grappled him, and submitted Mateusz Gamrot. That is a statement victory. And then to go out there in the BMF fight and dominate Max Holloway, like, look, I know it wasn't exactly what we think of for a BMF fight. We think of two guys that are going to go in there and have a back-and-forth striking battle. Charles Oliveira dominated Max Holloway like we have never seen before and exposed some weaknesses in the game of Holloway to a degree, but I feel like a lot of it is Charles is just that dang good. And I've been saying for years that Charles is one of, if not the most dangerous all-around fighter in UFC history. The most prolific finisher in the sport. He's coming off two very dominant and impressive victories. He absolutely deserves the title fight next. He's earned it. And he has the BMF belt. Right, so have him and Gaethje go in there, and we know Gaethje held the BMF belt at one point, right? Justin's coming off of the biggest win of his career against Ilia Topuria, and who's a guy that he lost to? Charles Oliveira. So this is a get back opportunity here for Justin. And at this point, for Gaethje to stick around, what would be the motivations, right? I'm sure financially, a bunch of money, but then also stuff that means something. And I know that Gaethje going out there and beating Arman Tsarukyan, a guy that has a ton of hype right now, like if Gaethje were to, imagine if Gaethje were to go out swinging by beating Paddy Pimblett, Ilia Topuria, and Arman Tsarukyan all in a row. That would be insane. Like, there would be some difficult conversations about maybe who the greatest lightweight of all time is, but I'm just saying that would be a crazy, crazy way to go out. It would. But imagine he gets some get back on Charles Oliveira, because I feel like Gaethje, if he fights a lot more patient and a lot more tactical, like what we saw against Ilia Topuria, and he fights more dialed in than what he did the first time against Charles, I think he has a very good shot to go out there and get this one back. Right, and this is a banger matchup. The first fight was crazy, man. It was absolutely crazy. Justin hurt him a couple of times. Charles stung him with the right hand, sat him down, and was able to hop on a submission. Gaethje was over swinging, right, kind of forgetting the technique a little bit, getting too careless. I feel like if you run this one back, Gaethje comes in with a disciplined game plan like what we saw in the Ilia fight. I feel like Justin has a very good shot to go out here and beat Charles. And imagine if he gets this one back. Because Charles is one of the biggest names in the sport. 100%. He's got a massive fan base. Everybody loves Charles Oliveira, right? He's super dangerous. And he's always in a fun fight, except kind of for the last one, right, against Holloway. So maybe the UFC is like, we didn't love that fight. We're not going to give you the title fight, but I feel like it's got to be Oliveira, man, because either way, whether you thought it was entertaining or not, he dominated Holloway like we've never seen before, doing what he did to Gamrot. And you have to remember, Gamrot stepped in on short notice. Charles took him on short notice. He was expecting a completely different stylistic opponent in Fiziev. So Charles has earned it. He's been active. And I'm not so sure if you don't run Oliveira versus Arman back that Charles doesn't get that one back, especially in a 5-round fight. He had Arman in more danger than Arman had him in. And Arman's just been inactive. I'm sorry. People want to complain about Khamzat being inactive, Ilia, Islam, some of the bigger names in the sport. Arman Tsarukyan has been maybe the most active out of any of the big names outside of McGregor, right? So you get my point. I just feel like the UFC at this point, maybe they give him the title shot. I would love to see Gaethje versus Arman. I feel like Arman is due for a title shot. But at this point, when you're this inactive, I don't know, man. I feel like Charles Oliveira, he's been busy. He's been racking off these impressive wins. This means something, especially if Oliveira can go out there and beat Gaethje again. That's massive considering what Gaethje just did. And if Gaethje can get the get back, this is more for me about Oliveira earning the shot. And then Gaethje, this makes sense for him. He's going to make a bunch of money, I'm sure. You get to get some get back here on a legend of the game in Oliveira. And I think with the right game plan, Gaethje can definitely go out here and get it back on Charles Oliveira. Not to mention, this is a banger matchup. I love this fight. Let's get this one booked. Next, it's got to be Ilia Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett. Listen, I've said this before. The UFC has to learn from past mistakes. And to be fair, the UFC, I feel like, has done a really, really good job, especially over the past few months and especially heading into the summer. They've done a really good job with the matchmaking. I feel like they're not getting enough credit for that. Some matchups are kind of weird, like Brendan Allen versus Shabazi, and it kind of makes you scratch your head, and then you're like, oh, well, Allen just wants to be busy. So it's like, okay. But the reality is there's been big fights that have just never happened because whether it was the timing wasn't right, the UFC is like, well, maybe if we can get this guy a win first and then this guy gets another win and then we can make it happen. The problem is time goes by, the game moves fast and things happen and it just may not come to fruition. This fight has to happen. And right now to me is the perfect time because Paddy Pimblett is coming off of the biggest win of his career, easily submitting Benoit Saint-Denis. He took no damage. Took no damage at all. A guy in BSD who has a win over Mauricio Rufy, by the way. It was a very dominant win, which is incredibly impressive. He was on a 4-fight win streak, comes into the fight, and Paddy Pimblett made him look easy. Benoit shoots a takedown, head on the outside hip, which was idiotic. I don't know what BSD was thinking. And Paddy Pimblett submits him, makes it look super easy. Right? And then considering the type of challenge that Paddy put up in the Gaethje fight, It aged okay considering what Gaethje did to Topuria. And now you have Ilia Topuria, who took the first loss of his career against Justin Gaethje, to where he almost had him out of there in the second round. It was a very competitive fight until Ilia started to slow down. The damage was adding up. He started to slow down, and Gaethje just started to do Gaethje things, started accumulating a ton of damage, and then the fight couldn't go on. And now Ilia, how does he bounce back? There's going to be all these questions. Is Ilia going to be the same guy? The aura took a hit. Can he bounce back? This is a huge fight, man. And I think that this fight is so big that you really don't need a belt, and this could headline a numbered event. If you mean to tell me that McGregor versus Holloway in 2026 can headline a card, why can't this? These are two relevant stars and two of the biggest stars in the game right now. And stylistically, it's super intriguing. Paddy's huge for the weight class. His striking's kind of funky, but he's got a method to the madness, right? Those string bean shots from range. His submission game is absolutely nasty, right? And he's durable as heck. So can he eat those big shots from Topuria? And what happens if Topuria lands all these shots on Pimblett and Pimblett's still hanging in there and we get into the mid to later rounds? So I feel like there's going to be so many questions about Ilia coming into this fight. And Paddy, he's one of the big stars right now, especially being on a McGregor card. He got a crazy pop at the press conference, especially in the venue for his walkout. Like Paddy his name is hot right now, red hot. To where Ilia, the name is still warm. But obviously the brand took a little bit of a blow from losing to Gaethje. This is the perfect time to book this fight. Ilia trying to bounce back, Paddy looking to continue to build momentum, and I think the winner of this fight could not only put themselves in position for a title shot, but they also could put themselves in position for the big McGregor fight if McGregor is going to have one more fight in the UFC. We'll have to see how that plays out. Will the UFC let him go? Will they book the Chandler fight? We tend to see when there's a big star that doesn't renew the deal with the UFC, they like to devalue them on the way out. And in my opinion, what a better way to send Conor out on an L to one of the guys that the UFC really likes and looks at as stars that they like to build up in Topuria and Pimblett. So winner goes out here, gets the job done, and then gets a big McGregor fight or a title shot. Stylistically very interesting. The back and forth, the press conferences, the embeddeds, the countdown. Everyone will be locked in for this fight. This would be a massive fight. The UFC needs to go ahead and book this, and I think that this could definitely be a main event of a numbered card despite not having a belt. I think it's that big of a fight in my opinion. Next, you do Arman Tsarukyan versus Max Holloway. Look, Arman Tsarukyan, I was saying, look, he's been out for too long. And I know you could say, well, given what's been going on in the lightweight division, and that's why he's sidelined. And look, I like that he's staying busy doing these RAF competitions. And I like RAF. So, like, it's cool seeing Arman in there and Hamzat, and it's creating a ton of buzz for RAF. So I like that. But in terms of Arman's fighting career, this dude is in the prime of his career. And in a way, it feels like it's going to waste. Right, so if he doesn't get the title shot, maybe the UFC goes ahead and gives it to him. I'm not sure about it. Go ahead and book him versus Max Holloway. Max Holloway's looked really good at 155. Right, look what he did against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. Then went back down, got KO'd by Topuria, but immediately came back up and dominated Dustin Poirier in the striking in the trilogy. Made it look pretty easy, right? Outside of getting dropped in round 2, it was all Max Holloway. And his powers never looked better than at 155. He still moves well. He's still very elusive. Right, got dominated by Oliveira, which it's not a great look, especially, getting taken down and controlled. And I know Charles's jiu-jitsu is much better than Arman, but still, Arman's a great wrestler. So stylistically, this to me is a good matchup for Arman. But if Holloway, he would have to answer some questions here. After what happened in the Oliveira performance, was it a bad night? Or can Max just not hang with these top flight grapplers in this weight class? Can he not hang with the top flight grapplers at 145? Because he never really fought too many of them, but especially at 55 here. Right, Max Holloway just got an easy payday against McGregor because it really wasn't even a fight. And I know he committed to basically bulking up to go to 170, but we know Holloway, yes, he's a big guy. He's a 155er at this point. He could come back down and fight Arman Tsarukyan because this is a number one contender fight as well, man. And I know the timelines, right, because Paddy, Ilia, maybe that would be at the end of the year. I feel like this is a fight you could book ASAP, like early fall, like September, October. Get this fight out of the way. Then the winner here, you could give them a title shot. And I know you could say, well, Arman's earned a shot. He's been out too long, man. This game moves quick. Look at all that Holloway's been able to do as well. And this can answer some questions about Max. Max, to me, is kind of hit like a second prime or is in his prime, whatever you want to say at lightweight. He's looked really good. Arman Tsarukyan in the prime of his career. This is a very intriguing stylistic matchup. Because if Max can't stop the takedowns, he's going to get destroyed. He's going to get taken down and possibly submitted by Arman. Probably not, though, because Max has good submission defense. But with the difference between Arman and Charles, while their games are different, Arman has nasty ground and pound. And he's a better, I would say, pure wrestler than Charles, right? So if he puts Max on his back, Max is going to be in some trouble because of the ground and pound. And arm and striking has gotten better. But if Max can dance around at range on the outside, man, I think he could tune up Arman Tsarukyan. And this is a great fight. Two dudes in their prime, two of the best, lightweights in the world. I think this is a super intriguing stylistic matchup that makes a ton of sense for both guys. Number one contender type of fight. I think it makes sense. Renato Moicano versus Mauricio Rufy. I want to see Mauricio Rufy go out here against a solid grappler again. And I know you could say, well, look what he just did to Michael Chandler. I mean, come on, man. Like Michael Chandler, the guy that was waiting on the sidelines for a couple of years, waiting for McGregor and let the tail end of his career of what he had left that was going to be good. He just basically wasted away, waiting on Conor. Got destroyed by Paddy, got destroyed by Rufy. And it's like, well, Chandler, we really don't look at as much of a threat, at least nowadays. I know he's got some power, but he was no challenge for Rufy. That was a layup. That was a layup to make Mauricio look good at the White House in a big spotlight. And Rufy's got the prime McGregor-like style. He's building a ton of momentum since losing to BSD. Crazy KO victory over, Rafael Fiziev, which is unbelievably impressive. Book this fight. We saw what Moicano did to BSD. I know we can play MMA math here. Moicano butchered BSD on the ground. And we know that BSD is a turtle on his shell, right? He's like, he can't get up off of his back. I've been saying that for a while. And look what Moicano did to him. So I feel like Mauricio Rufy would destroy Moicano, right? But again, we got questions. He's been working with Volkanovski. I feel like Rufy's takedown defense, it looked good against Chandler. Chandler couldn't even get close to getting a takedown. And Moicano's coming off of a great, performance against Chris Duncan. Beat the brakes off of him. It wasn't even competitive. Destroyed him. So Moicano took a little bit of a risk by taking that fight. It gave Duncan a big opportunity. And you heard Moicano, he's like, look, I want big fights. I want big names. I want the big money fights, basically, right? This is a big fight. Mauricio Rufy's a big name. He's an exciting fighter that a lot of people want to watch. And if Rufy hasn't plugged the holes in the takedown defense, which I think he has, Moicano's really good on the ground. He's got good submission skills. And on the feet, he's not bad. He looked good against Duncan. Now, granted, Rufy, definitely not Duncan, right? Rufy's elite on the feet, one of the best strikers in the UFC. And this would be a good way to keep kind of building Rufy up the lightweight division, because it's crazy because this guy really hasn't had a ton of fights in the UFC, especially against high-level opposition. Lost to BSD, got dominated in that fight, just didn't really look like himself, didn't have a lot of answers, was too hesitant, knocks out Fiziev in impressive fashion, destroys Chandler like he was supposed to. Give him a fight here, another one before we throw him into the deep end of this weight class. I mean, stylistically, I really like Rufy versus Holloway, but I just feel like that's a fight for Max. He's going to be like, look, I want a number one contender fight. So unless they say Rufy, you're getting a number one contender fight, I just don't, that for Holloway, that would be the reason for taking the fight. I don't see Max fighting that far back in the rankings, given the fact that he just had a big payday against McGregor. Yeah, he lost to Oliveira, but he's got wins over Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. So that's why I feel like this is a fight that would definitely make sense stylistically. I love the idea of Rufy versus Holloway, but I think this is another stepping stone opportunity for Rufy to go in there against a guy that's got a good ground game, good submission skills, and let's see how that takedown defense holds up against someone like Moicano, because I think Mauricio has made a ton of improvements since training with Volk. BSD versus Rafael Fiziev. This is absolutely the fight to make, in my opinion. This is a fresh matchup. BSD was on a nice win streak prior to, getting easily submitted by Paddy Pimblett. But the good news is BSD basically took no damage. Yeah, he got choked out, but it's not like he was getting punched around, right? Essentially took no damage, went through a camp, just rushed forward, threw a couple kicks, and left his head on the hip and got submitted. So to me, you can make a rather quick turnaround, right? We know the UFC, I think they head to France in September. Why couldn't we add BSD versus Rafael Fiziev on there? Fiziev just fought Manuel Torres, took some shots in the first round, but man, Fiziev fought smart in that fight. Took Torres down, knew that Torres is a fast starter and very explosive in round one, and then Fiziev came out and just put it on him in round two and got him out of there. Very, very impressive win and a big way for Fiziev to bounce back. This is a good fight. It's a fresh matchup. You got the brawling forward pressure style with the grappling of BSD versus the technical Muay Thai high-level striker that's very explosive in Fiziev, who's shown really, really good takedown defense. I think that this is a fascinating matchup and a good one at 155 pounds. I like this fight a lot. I think they should book this one early fall, man. I feel like these guys should be ready to rock and roll. I love this fight. Tom Nolan versus Brian Ortega. Now, I know, whoa. Brian Ortega. I know you might see that picture under Brian Ortega. You're like, is that Ortega? Is that actually him? Because it feels like Brian Ortega is like a ghost at this point. Like, we don't hear about this guy, and then he just randomly just shows up out of nowhere. Here's why I say this fight. Here's my logic. Because when you look at the rankings and stuff, Dana White, it's just a fight that made sense, right? This fight, it doesn't make sense, right? This fight, to me, you could say it doesn't make sense, but the reason I think it makes some sense is because Brian Ortega, I believe, has committed to 155 pounds. We haven't seen him in a while. He was supposed to fight Moicano. I think he got injured, pulled out of that fight. This fight makes sense for the reason of Tom Nolan is a very, very talented young fighter in this weight class that is already close to the top 10. Came off a massive victory against Fares CM, right? And outside of, I believe he lost to, Nicholas Mota. Outside of that loss there, he is looking better than ever, looking very improved. He's long and rangy for the weight class. He's got a very tall frame at 155, and he's very, very skilled in all areas. He's a good striker. He's a very good grappler. And people know Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega is one of these guys that kind of taps into some of that casual audience, right? Brian Ortega is a name, and I know he's been active and he's not the same guy that he was several years ago. I understand that, but he has a name value. And I feel like Tom Nolan's one of these guys that's very skilled that just isn't getting that push because he's just like, doesn't have a whole lot of a personality per se, right? It's not, like people like Tom Nolan, but it's just not, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't have that star power per se yet. And I feel like if you give him a name in Brian Ortega to where people are like, I know Ortega, I'll tune in, and they watch and they see Tom Nolan go out there and hopefully put on a good performance against a name like Ortega, I feel like this would be a very beneficial fight for Tom Nolan in terms of getting his name out there a little bit more. In terms of the rankings and what's best for Nolan and fighting ahead in the rankings, like does it make sense in that aspect? Not really. But before Tom Nolan just starts getting thrown into the deep end, look what the UFC did with Quillen Salkild. They gave him the Dariush fight, right? And I don't feel like they're going to give Nolan the Dariush fight, right? That'd be kind of crazy. But I feel like Ortega, he's durable. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. His boxing on the feet is all right. I feel like this is a fun matchup. It's not only a fun matchup, but one to help Tom Nolan build up his name a little bit more. That, to me, is what this is about. And if Ortega can go out there and beat Nolan, a hyped-up young fighter, like, it'd be like, boom, Ortega's back. And now he's kind of in contention at 155. So to me, this fight makes sense. I know when you look at the rankings, it's like, well, how does it make sense? And I know you might be like, is Ortega even around, right? Because he just pops up out of nowhere. I like this fight. I think it's a good way to build up Tom Nolan. And if Ortega gets a W over a hyped up guy like Nolan, I feel like it would be a big win for him. And then he could get a big fight at 155. I feel like this makes some sense. Bob Green, Dan Hooker. This is the fight to make. Bob Green's on a 4-fight win streak. A 4-fight win streak, dang near 40 years of age, and 3 out of those 4 wins are by finish. Beat Lance Gibson in a close fight. I thought it was a clear Bob Green win. I don't know why it was a split decision. He clearly won the fight. And we saw how good Lance Gibson looked against Chase Hooper. He's very explosive, very dangerous. Bob Green made it look pretty easy, right? Knocked out Daniel Zellhuber, made that look easy. You know, dominated Jeremy Stevens, submitted him, made it look easy. And then most recently, battled a ton of adversity, but then melted Terrence McKinney at the buzzer in the first round. So he's been looking better than ever. And Dan Hooker, I mean, he's got name value. He's a guy that people know the name Dan Hooker. He's a ton of fun to watch. He's always in an entertaining fight. He's definitely on the decline, not the same guy that he was a few years ago. So this is a banger fight. It's a striker's delight matchup, and both guys got underrated ground games, sneaky good ground games, especially Bob Green. This is a good fight. It's a banger. It probably play out on the feet. Someone probably gets finished, or we get a back-and-forth 15-minute war. I like this fight. Book it next. Bob Green deserves a big-name opponent next. Grant Dawson versus Rafa Garcia. So this is a rematch. Grant Dawson beat Rafa Garcia a couple years ago. I feel like Rafa has gotten a lot better since then. He's been on a nice win streak. You know, working with Cub Swanson, he's looking better than ever, right? That performance against Alexander Hernandez, the boxing, the forward pressure, right? He's just looking like a problem in this weight class. I'm not saying that he's going to be a top-ranked guy, but he's now in the rankings. He's looked very impressive recently. He's been racking off these good performances, and every time he's being called upon, he's been in an entertaining fight for the most part. So Grant Dawson, I know that he won the fight the first time, but I don't know if Grant Dawson's the same dude he was a few years ago. And I know he's coming off of a win over Rebetsky, and I get it. That, to me, was Mataush completely fumbling that fight. And fair play to Dawson to, battle back into the fight. He dang near got knocked out. Rebetsky, I don't know what he was doing. He kind of fumbled the finish, but Dawson just displayed better fight IQ. Was able to survive, was able to get it done. Dawson's a very good grappler. He's chinny on the feet. I feel like Garcia could go out there and do much better than what he did the first time around that these guys fought. So it's a get-back opportunity for Rafa. I just don't really see a ton of matchups that make sense for these guys right now in the rankings. They're not really big names. It doesn't feel like the UFC's giving these dudes the push, and stylistically, it's interesting. Dawson's striking has improved a little bit, but he's chinny on the feet. His grappling is good, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Rafa Garcia could stop some of those takedowns and box up Dawson on the feet and possibly even get a KO. I feel like you let Rafa get back in this fight. Last but not least, I got a little bit of a curveball for you. Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez. These are two guys that have alluded to moving up to 155 pounds. They're big 145ers. This is a fight that I've been calling for at featherweight. I've been calling for this fight. Please book Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez, man. It's a banger matchup. It's a great fight. Book this fight. And I know you could say, well, wait a minute. We want to see Diego fight a real 55er, a guy that's been in the weight class. And that's possible that the UFC could do that. It's possible, you could say the same thing for Yair. We want to see him fight an established 155er. So when they get the win, they get one more big win against another 55er and they're in title shot conversation. But for me, if both of these guys are going to move up, it'd be them being introduced to the lightweight division and already stacked weight class. This is a good fight because a lot of the back end guys in the weight class, like these guys are big names. Like, are they really going to want to fight those guys? Is the UFC really going to want to book some of those matchups? Because I feel like Diego and Yair are better than from the top 10 back, like outside of Rufi, like 11 through 15. I feel like both of these guys are better than those dudes all across the board. Diego Lopez, nasty jiu-jitsu, power on the feet. Yair Rodriguez, slick jiu-jitsu off of his back, and very, very dynamic on the feet with the striking. We know what Yair brings to the table. This is a banger fight. We wanted to see this before at featherweight. There's some bad blood here. This is a big fight, man. And I'd like to see it be a 5-rounder. You could make this a 5-round fight night main event. You could put this on a numbered card as a good co-main event. So this is a huge fight. Both of them, if they decide to move up to 155, that's why I got a question mark here, because are they actually going to move up or is it just talk? I think it would be great. Both dudes are big 145ers. I feel like book this fight. Them moving up to lightweight, welcome to the weight class. It's got the bad blood. This is a banger matchup that I feel like everybody would want to see. And I get it. Well, we want to see these guys fight an established 155ers. So now they're kind of in the mix and in the conversation. But I feel like you could give these guys, maybe one of these dudes could fight Manuel Torres, right? Either of these dudes against Manuel Torres would be a banger. But have them fight each other. And then after this, they could fight a big name at 155. Let kind of the dust settle at the top of the weight class. So I want to see this fight. That's the bottom line. Regardless of weight class, I want this fight. It's a banger stylistic matchup. There's bad blood here. This is absolutely the fight that should happen. But if you guys enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Please give it a like. Let me know what you think about these matchups down in the comments. And if you're new, if you could subscribe to the channel so you do not miss an upload, I would greatly appreciate it. I will see you next time.